The dining room shimmered under the glow of the grand chandelier, casting soft, golden light over the polished mahogany table. Every place was set with precision, crystal glasses filled with expensive wine, silverware gleaming under the light. It was a picture-perfect evening, yet the tension in the air was thick enough to cut through. I sat in my usual place, across from my sister, who was sipping from her glass with an air of ease, her designer dress perfectly tailored, her expression smug. My father, Gregory Lancaster, carved into his steak with the same methodical precision he approached business. My mother sat beside him, her eyes flickering nervously between us, her silence a habit she had perfected over the years. I knew something was off. This wasn't just another family dinner. So, I wanted to talk about the future of Lancaster Industries, my father said casually, as if this was a discussion about the weather. I straightened in my chair, my fingers tightening around my napkin. I had spent the last 2 years rebuilding the company from the ground up. When it was drowning in debt, hemorrhaging clients, and on the verge of collapse, it had been my software, my innovation that had saved it. I had worked night after night, developing an automation system that revolutionized logistics, cutting down operational costs by 40% and turning a failing company into an industry leader. My father cleared his throat. It's time we make some decisions about leadership. Given the company's growth, we need a strong, commanding presence at the top. A small smile crept onto my lips. This was it. Recognition. After all the sacrifices, after countless sleepless nights, he was finally going to acknowledge what I had done for this company, what I had done for his company. That's why, he continued, setting down his knife and fork, I've decided that Olivia will be taking over as CEO. I froze. The words didn't make sense at first, like they had been spoken in another language. My chest tightened, my grip on my napkin going numb. Olivia? My sister Olivia? The same Olivia who hadn't stepped foot in the office until 6 months ago. The same Olivia who had ignored every financial crisis, every strategic meeting, every late-night breakdown I had endured just to keep the company alive. I let out a short breath, steadying my voice. You're giving Olivia the company? My father barely glanced at me. She has the presence and leadership qualities necessary to represent Lancaster Industries. You're great with technical work, but leadership, he sighed, as if explaining something to a child. That's not your strength, Evelyn. I swallowed the burn rising in my throat. I had spent years proving myself, proving that I was more than just some technical person. I had built the foundation that kept the company from sinking. Olivia had done nothing but walk in at the finish line and smile for the cameras. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, as if she wanted to say something, but didn't dare to. Olivia, on the other hand, took another slow sip of her wine, watching me with that same knowing smile, the smile of someone who already knew the outcome, who had never had to fight for a thing in her life because it had all been handed to her. I forced myself to keep my expression neutral, to not react. I should have seen this coming. It was never about who deserved it. It was never about merit or loyalty or hard work. It was about control. This is a joke, right? My voice was even, but I could hear the sharp edge beneath it. I developed the software that saved this company. Without it, you wouldn't even have a company to pass down. My father chuckled lightly, like my words amused him. Then, as if proving how little he valued my effort, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed a crumpled bill onto the table. A $50 bill. For your effort, he said, taking another bite of his steak. The room fell silent. The bill landed between my plate and my untouched glass of wine. I stared at it, at the pathetic gesture of appreciation for years of sacrifice. $50. For the nights I hunched over my laptop, coding until my eyes burned. $50. For the sleepless weeks analyzing financial reports, strategizing ways to keep the company afloat. $50. For the innovation that had taken Lancaster Industries from a failing relic to a $300 million powerhouse. I looked up at my father, the man I had idolized, the man I had spent my entire life trying to make proud. And at that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time. I would never be enough for him. Not because I wasn't capable. Not because I hadn't earned it. But because he had already made up his mind about me a long time ago. I see, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. I picked up the $50 bill, turned it over in my fingers, then calmly folded it into my napkin. Then I stood. Evelyn, Don't be dramatic, my father scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile they were used to. It wasn't polite or appeasing. It wasn't for them. I'm not being dramatic, I said. I'm just excusing myself. Clearly, my role in this family is nothing more than a background character, so I'll remove myself from the scene. Olivia let out a soft chuckle, barely hiding her amusement. My mother's lips parted, but she said nothing. She never did. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step feeling lighter than the last. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't demand fairness. I simply left. And as I stepped outside, the night air crisp against my skin, one single thought burned in my mind. Watch me. The sun had barely risen when I arrived at the office the next morning. The sleek glass exterior of Lancaster Industries gleamed under the early light, a symbol of power, success, and everything I had worked tirelessly to rebuild. I had spent more nights in this building than in my own home, pouring every ounce of my intelligence, skill, and time into turning it around. Today, though, the place felt different. I walked through the lobby, my heels echoing against the polished marble floor. Normally, I was greeted with nods, polite smiles, the occasional "Good morning, Evelyn." But today, something was off. The receptionist, who usually met me with a bright grin, averted her gaze. Conversations hushed the moment I stepped past groups of employees. A few exchanged nervous glances, their whispers dissolving into silence as I passed. My stomach coiled, but I forced myself to keep walking. I took the elevator up to the executive floor where my office, my space, had been for the past 3 years. But as the doors slid open, I stopped short. The hallway, usually quiet and professional, buzzed with energy, employees moving in and out of what had once been my office. Boxes were stacked against the walls. A few familiar items sat on top, my books, my framed awards, even the small plant I had kept at my desk. I stepped forward slowly, my pulse steady, but my mind racing. My nameplate was gone. The door was wide open, and sitting in my chair, her manicured nails flipping lazily through a document, was Olivia. She looked up, smiling brightly. "Oh, Evelyn. Good morning." My fingers curled into fists at my sides. I forced myself to stay calm, to observe. "I wasn't aware we were moving offices," I said evenly. Her lips twitched in amusement. "Right. I guess Dad didn't tell you." She leaned back in my chair, crossing her legs, her expensive dress flawless as always. "I'll be working out of here now." The room felt smaller, tighter. I glanced at my desk, except it wasn't mine anymore. My computer was gone, the documents I had been working on vanished. The walls, once lined with my carefully curated plans, research, and projections, were empty. Everything I had built, every late-night strategy session, every breakthrough that had saved this company, erased. I met Olivia's gaze, refusing to let her see even a flicker of emotion. "And where am I working from?" She tilted her head, feigning consideration. "Dad thought it'd be best if you took on a role that better suited your skill set." I knew what was coming before she even said it. "You'll be reassigned to IT support." Just a temporary adjustment, of course. IT support. I had designed the entire software infrastructure that this company now relied on. I had built the foundation, automated the processes, transformed it from a failing relic into an industry leader. And now, I was being sent to the farthest corner of the building, stripped of any real authority, demoted to a role so beneath me that it was nothing short of an insult. I exhaled slowly. "Right. Temporary." Olivia smirked. "It's what's best for the company. You're a genius with tech, Evie, but leadership? It's not really your thing. You should stick to what you're good at." My nails dug into my palms. A few employees were lingering nearby, pretending to be busy, but clearly listening. I could see the shift in the office dynamics already. They were waiting to see how I'd react. I didn't. Instead, I nodded. "Understood." Olivia blinked, probably expecting me to argue, to lash out, to beg. When I didn't, she gave a small shrug and returned to the document in front of her. "Great. IT is on the 3rd floor. I'm sure they'll set you up with whatever you need." I turned on my heel and walked away. As I made my way down the hall, past familiar faces who now avoided my eyes, I understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't just a demotion, it was exile. A calculated, deliberate move to erase me from the company I had saved. It wasn't just Olivia. It was my father. This had never been about my competence. It had never been about what was best for Lancaster Industries. It was about keeping control within their hands. And they thought I would disappear quietly. I reached the third floor, stepping into a workspace that couldn't be more different from the executive suites. There were no floor-to-ceiling windows, no expansive views of the city skyline. Just rows of desks cluttered with cables and monitors, where young interns and junior engineers worked under fluorescent lighting. A manager greeted me, clearly nervous. Ms. Lancaster. We weren't expecting. Evelyn, I corrected. And yes, I know. Just tell me where I'm sitting. He hesitated before gesturing to a small, cramped desk near the farthest wall. A workstation with an outdated monitor, surrounded by employees who probably didn't even realize who I was. I sat down, adjusting my chair, my posture straight. I felt the eyes on me, the hushed murmurs. I said nothing. I did nothing, because I knew better than to react. I had learned long ago that in power struggles, the ones who lash out first always lose. So I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I watched. And in less than a week, I saw exactly what was happening. Olivia was in way over her head. She strutted through the office, holding endless meetings, making decisions based on instinct instead of actual data. She dismissed department heads who tried to advise her, replacing them with her friends, people whose only qualifications were knowing which wine pairs best with which imported cheese. She didn't understand the software. She didn't understand the market. She didn't understand the company. The board members, who had been hesitant but ultimately went along with my father's decision, were already second-guessing their support. Employees whispered in hallways, worried about the reckless decisions being made. They didn't need months to ruin what I had built. They just needed weeks. And I had built everything they were now destroying. That's when I made my decision. If they didn't want me at Lancaster Industries, I would build something bigger. And this time, when I walked away, I wouldn't just leave. I would take everything with me. From my tiny desk in the farthest corner of the third floor, I watched it all unravel. Olivia strutted through the office like a queen, issuing orders with the confidence of someone who had never actually earned her position. She scheduled endless meetings, wasting hours on vague discussions while real work piled up. She surrounded herself with people who told her exactly what she wanted to hear, not the people who actually knew what they were doing. It didn't take long for cracks to form. Clients who had trusted Lancaster Industries for years started growing impatient. Projects were delayed because Olivia dismissed key department heads, replacing them with friends who had zero industry knowledge. The finance team, the marketing leads, even some of the senior engineers. One by one, they either resigned or were fired for not aligning with the new vision. The company that I had saved was beginning to crumble. And I said nothing. I stayed at my little desk, fixing minor IT issues, responding to tickets like a low-level employee while chaos spread like wildfire above me. People hesitated to talk to me at first. But they weren't stupid. They saw what was happening. And soon, whispers began to reach my ears. This new strategy doesn't make sense. She ignored our entire analytics report. We're losing our best clients, and she doesn't even care. I didn't need to do anything. Olivia was burying herself. What I did need, however, was the right people. I started reaching out to them quietly, former colleagues, the ones who had been pushed out because they were too smart to nod and agree with every bad decision. Some had left voluntarily, seeing the disaster ahead. Others had been forced out when Olivia replaced them with incompetent yes-men. Jake, our former CFO, was the first to meet with me. He had been with the company through its darkest times, keeping the financials afloat when everything was collapsing. When Olivia took over, she fired him within 2 months and replaced him with a childhood friend who had zero financial background. Then there was Maya, the best data analyst I had ever worked with. She was the one who had built our customer profiling system from the ground up, the one who had personally predicted the market trends that helped us stay ahead. Olivia called her position redundant and let her go. And David, my lead engineer, my right-hand man, the only person who knew my software as well as I did because we had coded most of it together at 3 a.m., running on caffeine and pure desperation. Olivia never even bothered to learn his name. I met with them one by one, away from the office, in quiet coffee shops and small conference rooms. The conversations were never long. They didn't need to be. "You're building something new," Jake said. arms crossed, his expression serious. "Aren't you?" I nodded. "Yes." Maya leaned forward. "What's the plan?" I pulled out a folder, placing it on the table. Inside was everything I had been working on in secret. We build something better. There was one thing Olivia and my father had overlooked. Yes, they owned Lancaster Industries. Yes, they had the rights to the company's existing software. But the most advanced version, the one with the highest level automation, the one that had the potential to revolutionize logistics on a global scale, had never been implemented into the company. Because I never uploaded it to their servers. It was still mine. David let out a low whistle as he flipped through the pages. "This is insane." Jake was already analyzing the financial models. "If we roll this out, we wouldn't just compete with Lancaster Industries. We'd bury them." I met his gaze. "That's the goal." None of them needed convincing. They had seen the writing on the wall before anyone else. They knew Lancaster Industries under Olivia was a sinking ship, and they weren't about to go down with it. Within a week, we had secured a workspace. Nothing flashy, just a small rented office with enough space for real work to begin. I took what I had built for Lancaster, refined it, improved it, made it stronger, faster, more efficient. But this wasn't just about the software. It was about building the company we deserved. A company where competence mattered more than politics, where innovation wasn't stifled by nepotism, where the best people weren't shoved aside for being too smart or too ambitious. So, I didn't fight back. I didn't argue. I didn't beg my father to reconsider. I built something better. And while Lancaster Industries was crumbling from the inside, I was preparing to take over the entire industry. It didn't take long for everything to fall into place. The moment we launched the new company, it felt like the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. We weren't just another startup trying to break into the market. We weren't trying to scramble for space. We were the space. We had better systems, better leadership, and the kind of innovation that would change the logistics industry forever. The software that had been dismissed, ignored, and left behind in the ruins of Lancaster Industries was now front and center in our new business. And it was a game changer. It wasn't just a minor improvement. It was a leap ahead. Clients we had once served under my father's name were now hearing from me, personally. It wasn't difficult to secure deals. I built the relationships, I knew the people, and most importantly, they knew the software. The difference was now, instead of trying to save a sinking ship, I was offering them something that would push them ahead of their competitors, something they needed, something they could rely on. The contracts came pouring in, one after another. Within weeks, companies that had once been loyal to Lancaster Industries were jumping ship. They didn't care about loyalty or family ties anymore. They cared about their business, and they saw the future with us. They didn't hesitate to cut ties with Olivia's mismanagement and outdated systems. They were done with her. I didn't have to say a word to Olivia or anyone at Lancaster Industries. My actions spoke louder than anything I could say. It wasn't long before the first signs of trouble surfaced at Lancaster. The calls from clients started dwindling. The emails stopped coming in. In a matter of days, contracts that had been in place for years were being pulled, some quietly, others with more force, as clients began to openly voice their concerns about the company's stability. Olivia was quick to blame everyone but herself. Her staff, the finance team, the marketing department, none of it was her fault. She fired anyone who even looked like they might know how to fix things, replacing them with her friends, the ones who had no clue what was happening, the same people who had failed before. She didn't even know how to read the data, let alone make decisions based on it. I watched it all unfold from the comfort of our new office, but I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. I had warned them, not with words but with action. The financial strain began to show. Lancaster's stock price dropped as more clients left, and rumors of a massive financial collapse began to surface. Investors grew nervous. The board meetings became frantic, with Olivia and her team trying to piece together a plan that would keep the company afloat. But it was too late. The damage was already done. At the same time, our company's success seemed to skyrocket. Word of our advanced software spread quickly. We became the industry's new standard, the name everyone wanted to work with. And with each passing day, Lancaster's fall became more apparent. Olivia kept pushing the blame, but the truth was undeniable. The company had been lost long before I walked away. The final blow came when I received an offer I had been expecting, but never anticipating, an offer worth millions. One of the largest companies in the industry had taken notice of our innovation, and they were eager to sign a deal with us. A deal that would skyrocket our company's valuation and completely eclipse everything Lancaster Industries had ever been. I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers, locking in the deal that would secure our future and their demise. The contract was worth more than some of the largest deals Lancaster had ever made, and in a single stroke, I went from being their problem to being the future of the industry. The news broke shortly after. In a matter of hours, we had become a dominant force in the logistics market, and Lancaster Industries, led by Olivia, had become irrelevant. Olivia, who had once been handed the reins to everything I had worked for, was now watching from the sidelines as her company crumbled beneath her. I wasn't just competing with them anymore. I had destroyed them. Lancaster Industries was obsolete. Every client that had once trusted them was now on board with us. The software I had built, the systems they had neglected, the foundation I had laid, they were now all in our hands. And the old company, led by Olivia's reckless decisions, was a fading memory. I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. There was no victory dance, no gloating. It wasn't necessary. What I had built stood on its own. And their failure? It was inevitable. I knew there would be no way for Olivia to recover from this. No amount of trying to fix things or placing blame could change the fact that her leadership had torn everything down. No one would trust Lancaster again, not after the mismanagement, the ignorance, the endless mistakes. And as I looked at the success we had achieved, how far we had come, I realized that I didn't need them. Not then, not ever. Our company was thriving. They were dying. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It was a quiet Tuesday when I got the call. My father and sister wanted a meeting. The urgency in their voices was unmistakable, and for a brief moment, I considered how satisfying it would be to turn them away. But I knew better than that. They were desperate, and I was in a position to make them wait. I didn't return their call immediately. Instead, I set the time and location for them to come to me, my office, my turf. They arrived 2 days later, both looking smaller than I remembered. My father, the man who had once ruled with unwavering confidence, now looked worn down and frail. The power that once radiated from him had been replaced with a palpable air of desperation. Olivia followed, her expression guarded but clearly frazzled, her designer clothes almost too bright against the backdrop of her failure. I stood behind my sleek, modern desk in my spacious corner office, a far cry from the cramped cubicle they had relegated me to just months before. The floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of the city, everything I had worked for, everything I had built. They entered, hesitating as they looked around, clearly uncomfortable in the unfamiliar environment. Father cleared his throat. "We need to talk, Evelyn," he began, his voice strained, no longer commanding. "Caldwell Enterprises is weeks away from bankruptcy. We're asking for your help." Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers tapping nervously against the armrest. She shot a glance at my father, as if waiting for him to take the lead. "We need someone who understands the tech side, who can lead," she said, her voice tight. "I'm offering you a leadership position in the company. Under me, of course." I let their words hang in the air for a moment, savoring the tension. They were offering me a leadership position, but it was a position below Olivia, a role that kept me subordinate to her, a woman who had no idea how to run a company. They wanted to pretend the years of neglect, the years of undermining me, had never happened. I couldn't help myself. I let out a small, humorless laugh, not out of cruelty, but out of the sheer arrogance of their request. They had forgotten me. They had thrown me aside like I was expendable. Now they wanted to pretend like I was still just one of their employees, ready to climb back into their world, as if nothing had changed. I straightened my posture, locking eyes with my father. "I don't need Caldwell Enterprises," I said, my voice cold and deliberate. "You needed me, and you threw me away." The words landed like a punch. My father blinked, clearly unprepared for my response. Olivia's face flushed, and she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. For the first time, I saw it in their eyes, the realization that they were no longer in control. They had lost. I didn't need to say anything more. The message was clear. I wasn't going to play their game. "No," I said simply. "I'm not going to help you. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. There was no negotiation, no second chance. I had built a new empire from the ground up, and I didn't need the wreckage of their company to validate my success. They had underestimated me, and now they would see just how far I'd come without their approval. The collapse of Caldwell Enterprises was as swift as it was inevitable. Within weeks, the company went from a titan in the industry to a dying relic, its assets scattered, and its future uncertain. The headlines told the story. One strong empire crumbles after mismanagement. What had once been the heart of the logistics industry was now a sinking ship, abandoned by clients, investors, and employees alike. The few who remained were left scrambling for jobs, realizing too late that they had been loyal to a sinking ship. It didn't surprise me. After all, I had seen it coming. What did surprise me was how quickly it all fell apart. Olivia's leadership, built on superficial knowledge and poor decisions, had turned what was once a thriving business into an empty shell. I didn't need to do anything. The company destroyed itself in record time. But while they crumbled, I was rising. Nova Systems was thriving, securing deals left and right, establishing itself as the industry's new leader. And as I watched Caldwell's downfall, I knew there was one more thing I had to do. I had to erase them completely. When the company was officially liquidated, I made my move. At the auction, I placed a bid, securing all of Caldwell's remaining assets, the headquarters building, the patents, the name itself. And then, when the deal went through, I made my decision. I wasn't going to revive Caldwell Enterprises. I was going to bury it. Caldwell's name, its legacy, everything it stood for, gone. I erased it completely, ensuring that it would never rise again. What had been my family's empire was now nothing more than a faded memory, its name reduced to nothing more than an echo of its former self. Months later, I received a letter from my father. The envelope was thick, the handwriting familiar. I opened it carefully. Inside, he wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you understand." I read it twice, and then, without a second thought, I tossed it into the fire. The flames consumed the last remnants of Caldwell Enterprises, the last ties to the people who had betrayed me. I stood back and watched it burn. I was free. And the best revenge? It wasn't destruction. It was the quiet peace of success.